at the next question. So the next question says the volume of a cone is 500 meters cubed. If the radius is 8 centimeters, determine the surface area. Now, what's a little bit different from this question is, first of all, they didn't give me a diagram. So the first thing I would do is I would draw a diagram. Now, I suppose I could draw it freehand, or I'm just going to draw it a little bit using the tools that I have. Okay, so I have a cone. I know with a cone there's a few different shapes I'm interested in. I'm interested in a radius. I'm also interested in the perpendicular height. And I'm also interested in the slant height. So I'm just going to put those items, those letters, and fill in what I do know. So this is the height, this is the radius, and this is the slant height. Now, the only pieces of information they give me is they do give me the radius. They do not give me the slant height or the perpendicular height. The other piece of information they give me is the cone, and I'm supposed to determine the surface area. So very similar to the last question, I'm going to bring up my two formulas. So this is, I cheated a little bit. I wrote them while I was waiting for the movie to make. Okay, so there's the volume of a cone and there's the surface area. So let's take a look what we do know. And I'm just going to use little check marks for a second. If I look at this, I know R and I know volume because they gave it to me, but I don't know this. So that's one unknown. So I could solve for H. This one here, I know the radius. I'm finding surface area. I know radius, but I don't know side length. So if I look at side length, it's that right angle triangle, but the right angle triangle, I have two unknowns. So I have to start with the volume formula first in order to get the height. Okay, so I'm going to get the height. Once I get the height, I use Pythagorean theorem. Once I get the slant height, then I can finish the question. Okay, so it's a three-part question. So volume is 500. Okay, there is our pi. Our radius is 8 squared. And our height we need to find. So I'm going to pull up my calculator and calculate approximately what that is. As soon as I get it over where we can see the question. So we have 1 divided by 3 times pi times 64 equals. So approximately 6.09. Okay, and remember we're solving for our h, so we need to divide both sides by 6.09. And when we do that, we'll bring up the calculator again. So we have 500, and we're dividing it by the answer, which I can do. So approximately 82. So this is 82 equals our height. Okay, and as I said before, I often put it in the diagram. Now what I can do is I can solve for S because I have everything I need. Okay, so this height actually was pretty tall. Did I get all the right decimals there? Yep, I did. I just checked because it seems different compared to, for instance, the radius. So it's much higher than what my diagram shows. So if I take now, and I'm going to take out that right angle triangle, this is 8, this was 82, and I need to find S. So S is my C. So I write down the Pythagorean theorem. S squared is going to equal 82 squared plus 8 squared. And when we do that, calculator keeps turning off, just like the real one does. Plus 64. So 146. So that means S, we take the square root of it. And I'm going to ask my calculator to take the square root of the answer. So approximately 12.1. So we have that as 12.1. And that does not seem correct because, because I didn't do 82 squared. So back up a second. I'm sure you didn't have that copy down, or maybe you did. I just did 82. So clear. 82 squared plus 64 equals, that looks better, 6788. Okay, and sometimes you can catch yourself making mistakes like that. I know that the hypotenuse has to be the largest side. That's why it didn't make sense that I put down 12.1. Okay, so now I want to take the square root of that answer, and we end up with approximately 82.4. Okay, and that's an okay amount because it is still larger than 82. So that's 82.4. And now what we're going to do is we're going to find our surface area. So I've gone down here. Now I'm going back up here just so people can follow what we're doing. So surface area is going to equal pi times the radius, which was 8 squared, plus pi times 8 times our 82.4. And again, we're going to take out our calculator, and we're actually going to do the calculation, and I'm going to do it all in one step because my writing ability on my tablet isn't always the greatest. Times 8 times 82.4 equals 2271, so it would round to 2272. 72, and we're finding surface area, so it's going to be centimeters squared. Okay, so one more question, and it is very different. Okay, this is the last question. So we have 3 cylinders are being compared. Determine the ratio of their volumes. If cylinder A has a radius of r and height h, B 3 times the radius and half the height, and C half the radius and 4 times the height. Okay, so ratio. We've done ratio before, so we're actually doing A. Oops, get my pen up where I want. So we're doing A to B to C. Now, let's first of all think about when we're talking about volume. Volume of a cylinder we know is equal to pi r squared h. Okay, so all of these we're comparing their pi r squared h's. Now, the thing is, this is our base one. So notice we're starting with r and we're starting with h. So I'm going to put that down as our first one, pi r squared h. This one here says has 3 times the radius. So first of all, we're going to start with 3 times the radius. Okay, so 3r, remember it's got to be squared, and half the height. So that would be half the height. Okay, now we're just going to wait a second before we do anything with that. Let's look at cylinder C. Cylinder C has half the radius. So again, pi, half of the radius remember that gets squared, and 4 times the height. Now, the first thing that I would do is I would first of all simplify the best I could. I'm going to leave pi the way it is. This one's going to stay the way it is as well too. You can recopy it if you want, if that makes life a little bit easier. Um, Pi, okay, some exponent work. Okay, this 2 is applied to both of them. So it's going to be 3 squared, which is 9, r squared, 1/2 h. Okay, now we can continue here if we want. The 9 and the 1/2 I can put together. So that would be 4.5 pi r squared h. Okay, leave that alone. Let's go to the next one. Half has got to come into both of them. So if I square a half, I get a quarter. And I still have r squared. And I have 4h. This one, I can put the 4 and a quarter together. 4 times a quarter is 1 whole. So here I have pi r squared h. Now let's take a look because they asked us to make the ratio. What things do both of them have, all 3 of them have in common? Well, they all have a pi. So the pi isn't involved in this. So I'm just going to kind of go pi, pi, pi. So it's not involved. R squared is involved in all of them. R squared, R squared, R squared. H is involved with all of them. Okay, so the real difference, well, actually, there's no difference between the first one and the last one. So if I sign this as 1, this is 4.5, and this is 1 again. So this one and this one are exactly the same, even though I did things to it. So when I'm looking at the ratio, I don't want to include the pi, the r squared, or the h, because they have that all in common. So the ratio is 1 to 4.5 to 1. Okay, so that one's a really different one, but that's probably the easiest to line the work directly underneath each item. Fill out the most that you can, leave pi as pi, and then cross out everything they have in common, and then assign this is ratio of 1, this is ratio of 4.5 and 1. Now, if you don't like the 4.5, you could multiply each ratio by 10 if you wanted to. You could go 10 to 40, 45 to 10, but that still wouldn't be in lowest terms. So you could leave it like this. And if you notice, when you start changing radiuses, okay, because the radius gets squared, it affects the number. So this number didn't change it by 3, it actually changed it by a factor of 9. Okay, so it makes a huge difference when you're squaring something, how much you're really truly changing it. Okay, so a worksheet for you tomorrow. Have fun.